All right, today we have Monica Yatooma with us, and she is running for Secretary of State. Thank you, Monica, for joining us.
Happy to
And
be here.
yeah, thank you for filling out the questionnaire and interviewing with us tonight. We're looking forward to publishing the questionnaires and all the interviews to the Michigan GOP, the district, and the county GOPs. We want to get them out to everybody with the goal to inform the delegates. And I want to thank Jason from Washtenaw for joining with me, and the Berrien GOP is helping us out with the tech in the background. So with that said, can you introduce yourself to us and tell us how the Secretary of State race is going so far?
Absolutely. So, hey, everybody, my name is Monica Yatooma. I'm a lifelong Michigan resident and a business owner. And so I'm someone who believes deeply in accountability, hard work, and really just doing things the right way. And so my professional background spans both in the private and the nonprofit sectors. And so I own and operate a biohazard medical waste business that I built from the ground up. And so now we operate statewide. And so I also serve as the director of a 501c3 and a 501c4 that have helped parents across the state take back local control of their child's education. And we actually played a key role in 24 in helping Trump take back Michigan, Republicans take back the majority here in the state house. And so in those roles, I've been responsible for budgets, compliance, operations, and outcomes, not theory, but real responsibility. And I've learned that leadership is not about titles. It's not about results. It's about results, transparency, and being accountable to the people that you serve. And so I've also been involved directly in election work. I've worked in election. I've helped recruit election workers. I've seen firsthand how important clear rules and proper training and integrity are to public trust. And so when systems are confusing or inconsistent, people lose confidence, and that affects all of us. And so what really drives me is the belief that government should serve its citizens, not the other way around. And so it should be lawful, it should be transparent, it should be focused on its core responsibilities, whether it's elections, record keeping, everyday services. I believe that we deserve systems that are fair, efficient, and trustworthy. So I'm also a mother, and like so many parents, I think constantly about the future we're leaving for our kids. And so the decisions we make today about integrity, accountability, and the rule of law, they shape the world and the Michigan that our kids are going to inherit. And so everything that I've done professionally and personally has prepared me to take responsibility seriously, ask hard questions, and to insist on doing things the right way. And I believe Michigan is worth that effort now and for generations to come. And so these are all reasons why I've decided to run for Secretary of State.
Thanks, Monica. That was great. So I'll kick us off with the first question, and that is, if you win the nomination by the delegates on March 28th, what is your race, the Secretary of State race, going to look like against a Democrat challenger between then and November?
So I think it's going to be really, really important to run a strong get out the vote operation, right? And this means making sure having the funds to hire door knockers, to hire phone bankers, to make sure that we're registering voters, because we have a huge part of our base that isn't even registered to vote, right? And so another huge part of that is going to be getting people out to vote. So we have to hire a crew that understands how to not only knock on doors, but chase those ballots and make sure people are getting out to vote and make sure those ballots get turned in. So I think being able to raise money is going to be important. Being able to run this get out the vote program is going to be important. But also having these national connections, right, with like Turning Point or say the Heritage Foundation, all these big DC organizations, these conservative think tanks. I have these relationships and these connections, and it's going to be really important to have that because we have to be able to convince them that we have the right candidate to win the general election. And I can tell you so far, I have that support, and I'm going to bring that with me into the general election.
Great. And on the flip side, if the delegates don't nominate you, what then? What happens at that point?
Well, honestly, it's not that much different. I'm just going to still do everything that we can to win. Obviously I would love to win and I would love to be the candidate, but at the end of the day, the party needs a win. And so we're still going to do all the same things.
Awesome. Thanks, Monica. So getting into a couple of issues questions.
Sure.
MCL 168509R speaks to the maintenance of the qualified voter file, the QVF, as a shared responsibility between the SOS and local clerks. So would your SOS office give local clerks the capability to directly update the voter file? And what other steps will your SOS office take to ensure the voter file is current and accurate?
So that's a great question. My goal as SOS is to decentralize, not centralize. That means giving more power back to the clerks so that they can maintain the voter rolls. They don't have to go through me to be able to do that. I want them to be able to have that power. And so that's me operating and assuming that all clerks are going to do the right thing, right? And so I know there might be some bad apples, and if there is, we'll address that. But I think the most important message that I can get out is that we're going to give the clerks the power to do that, because they are local. And so they are who the voters are, the voters are coming to them. And so I want that to be able to get done quickly and easily, not having to go through the Secretary of State for everything. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question, Joel?
Just more broadly, how do you ensure that the voter file stays current and accurate?
Well, look, we've got to clean it up. So first and foremost, we can't have people voting in our elections that are non-citizens. So if you're going to vote in our elections, you have to have an ID and you have to show proof of citizenship. This should be bare minimum, just a bare minimum standard. So that's first and foremost. Second, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. In the past, when Ruth Johnson was Secretary of State, she cross-checked our voter rolls with Department of Homeland Security's federal database. It had birth dates, it had social security numbers, it showed proof of citizenship, had all the information that we need. And she did quarterly auditing, and she was very successful at cleaning up the rolls. However, I want to go a little bit more aggressively, because the rolls have been such a mess because of Jocelyn Benson, and just do a monthly audit and just stay on top of it. I think if we take that, combine it with giving the clerks the power to remove, right, duplicate voters, dead voters, non-citizens, whatever it is, I think we can keep those rolls really clean, tight, and secure.
So follow up on that. As SOS, can you mandate a proof of citizenship to vote in any of our elections, federal, state, or local? And
so here's
require legislative action.
It's going to require legislative action. So, but my hope is that the amendment that we're trying to get onto the ballot right now is successful. If for whatever reason that it's not, this is going to be a top priority. Like day one, go straight to the state legislature and say, hey, we need to get this done. And I can't imagine this would not be a bipartisan effort. And honestly, if we do have people that are not on board, my plan is to very highly publicize that so people know, because I think that's something important and we should all be on board.
Absolutely.
So following up a little bit, the U.S. Constitution states in Article 1, Section 4, that the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. So we know that under the umbrella of emergency powers, the SOS office under Jocelyn Benson decided to issue mail-in ballot applications to all registered voters in 2020. So given Article 1, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution, what would you look at doing, both kind of looking back at what she's done, so retroactively, as well as then proactively in your SOS office to correct the past and ensure elections are constitutionally lawful going forward?
Well, for one, I'm going to work with the state legislature on anything, and any rules or anything that I try to enforce, the goal is to make sure that it's durable, right? So none of this JCAR stuff that she's doing right now, where she's going around and changing rule sets. I want to make sure that we set rules in place or laws in place that protect our elections, that help voter roll maintenance, that help secure absentee ballots. But so she sent absentee ballots out to every registered voter, but that included inactive voters too, right? And so this goes hand in hand with making sure that the voter rolls are clean. So we make sure that the voter rolls are clean. And when we issue absentee ballots, they only go to active voters. But the thing is too, with the absentee ballots, I'd like to take us out of just being an automatic registration state. If you want an absentee ballot, you've got to register for it annually, every single year, and you've got to show ID and you've got to show proof of citizenship.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of controversial question. Are drop boxes an inevitability? And if they are, what specific measures will you take to fully secure them? And if they're not, what specific steps will you take to remove them across the state? And would removing them place any extra burden on our local clerks?
So I don't know if they're inevitable. I think it's okay to have some. I don't think that we need as many as we have now, because I do think they are a mechanism for fraud and ballot harvesting. Because if you if you take ballot harvesters and you're forcing them to go into the clerk's office to turn in ballots, that's much more difficult, right? Because then the clerk can catch what they're doing. But if all they have to do is drop it into a drop box, it makes it super easy to be nefarious, or for there to be malfeasance. So here's the thing with the drop boxes. I think we can cut them at least in half for what we see out there right now. And then when we do that, even the ones that we still have, they have to have surveillance. I can't imagine that they wouldn't. And so we have to make sure the surveillance actually works, that it's clear. We've got different angles. And so we can see everything going into that drop box and every person coming up to that drop box. So that's where I stand on the drop boxes.
So thinking back to 2020, and even if you're able to institute everything that you want to institute to secure our elections, if we still had an event like 2020, where we have disputed election results or widespread allegations of irregularities, how would you ensure a transparent certification process? And can you detail your approach on how you would do that, collaborating with local clerks, handling legal challenges, communicating with the public, with the ultimate goal of trust in the system?
Yeah, so here's what I can say. So if I had been Secretary of State in 2020, the election would have been run differently from day one. So I would not have issued broad unilateral guidance without clear legislative or rulemaking authority. And absentee ballots would have only gone to registered voters who provided ID and proof of citizenship, and then signature verification. It would have been applied consistently and transparently. So every step of the election would have been fully documented with secure audit trails. Poll books and election data would have never been destroyed. Poll workers would have received consistent, thorough training, so all procedures would have been strictly followed. And then communication with local clerks, it would have been clear, it would have been legal, it would have been consistent, and any obstruction of the process would have been met with immediate enforcement of the law. So simply put, the election would have been secure, lawful, and transparent, unlike what we actually got, which would have protected both the voters and the integrity of Michigan's elections.
All right.
So talking about the integrity of our elections, going back to the qualified voter file, some of our problem, at least, if not a lot of our problem, is our contract with Eric. And so you've stated that on day one you would try to get us out of that. How would that happen? What are the steps you have to go through to get us out of Eric?
It's really actually not that difficult. I just have to contact Eric and say, hey, Michigan's no longer going to be participating in Eric. And I mean, I think actually from what I understand, there could potentially be a contract. I don't know if we're locked in, but from what I understand from other states that have pulled out of Eric, that's been a non-issue. I think maybe just like written notice. I don't know how many days or what that looks like. It's already paid for up front, right? She already paid a $25,000 fee. She pays a small monthly fee. So fiscally, it's all been paid for. So there's nothing owed there money-wise. So I can imagine it would be difficult to pull us out. I've watched other states do it, so I would imagine it would be a similar process.
You've talked before about with the voting machines, the concept of some of the challenges with foreign involvement or parts or some sort of foreign aspect to those. Can you kind of touch on that again for people that haven't heard you talk about that yet?
Absolutely. So it's very straightforward. We have a law in Michigan that says our tabulators can't have any foreign components. And I think that's for good reason. I don't understand why we would want any outside countries having any access to any of our machines, any of our voting machines. So the law is that they can't have foreign components. So if we have machines that have foreign components, I mean, it's pretty easy. It's like 2 + 2 = 4, right? That machine goes by. So that's like Dominion, for example, right? If anybody's still using Dominion, which I don't understand why, because it has foreign components, we've been able to prove that, Dominion's got to go. If a machine is using foreign components, we're not using it. And that's easy. It's already breaking the law. And we should be getting rid of them right now. I don't know why she's not. And then, I'd like to investigate the other machines and see what's going on, because we don't know for sure what they're using. But again, if they're using foreign components, we don't want them. We don't want any foreign interference in our elections. Not in this country, not in this state, that's for sure.
Okay. And following up on that a little bit, you hear that some of the data travels, outside of the state or overseas to overseas servers, and that the data kind of does a little globe trot on its way to actually becoming an election result. Are you aware of any of that, and any thoughts on how we eliminate that from our process? Obviously, ideally nationally, but at least here in Michigan.
Sure. So from what I understand, and I hope I'm answering your question correctly, but what I understand is that these machines they're hackable. They're just like any other technology. And so there's Bluetooth access, there's the access through the modems. And so based on testimonies from cybersecurity experts, people in the CIA that were part of a lot of these election processes, there are people around the world that can access these machines. And so from what I understand, I'm going to just use an example. They can take every, fifth vote and flip it Republican or flip it Democrat, right? For example. And so I think the most important thing with the data and with these machines is we've got to go back to just making them analog. If we're going to use machines, they need to just count, and that's it. There needs to be no outside access. We need to make sure that we're turning on the transaction log so that we know who's accessing the machines, when they're accessing them, what they're doing when they're accessing them. I just think there needs to be like really strong audit trails with the data, with the machines, with the ballots, with everything. And so we can really document the chain of custody. And I think if we can do that, then we can keep track of things. And look, if something's not working and we find out that something's going on with the machines, then we address it, right? But we have to be able to prove what's going on.
So, Monica, thank you for joining us. And in closing, could you tell the delegates what makes you the best Republican candidate for Secretary of State? And if you have anything to add you haven't already said, that would be fantastic.
Sure. So as we close, I want to just share what truly defines me and brings and the leadership that I bring. So I'm not a career bureaucrat. I come from the real world where results matter. And as a business owner and the director of a 501c3 and a 501c4, I've managed budgets, compliance, operations, and outcomes. I've been responsible for making hard decisions, fixing broken systems, and delivering results and not just talking about them. And I've also done the work before. I understand what it takes to build support, communicate clearly, and win tough general elections against Democrats. I know how to speak to voters beyond our base and how to defend conservative principles confidently and how to compete and win when the stakes are high. So that experience all matters because we must win this seat in November. And I'm the only candidate in this race with the tools, the resources, and the connections to help us do that and get other conservatives elected up and down the ballot. I've worked in election. I've helped recruit election workers. I've seen firsthand how inconsistent rules, poor communication, and lack of accountability undermine public trust. So elections are not abstract to me. They're a serious responsibility that demands competence, integrity, and respect for the law. And so I believe leadership means listening to the experts, empowering teams, and holding people accountable when standards are not met. It means following the law even when it's inconvenient and putting citizens ahead of the politics. And so most importantly, I'm a parent. So like so many families across Michigan, I think about the future we're leaving our children. So public trust, the rule of law, and election integrity are not optional. They're foundational. And if we get these wrong, then nothing else works. And so everything that I've done professionally, politically, and personally, it's prepared me to lead with integrity, restore confidence, and ensure Michigan has leadership that can both govern effectively and prevail when it matters most. So my track record shows that not only am I action-oriented, but I'm results-oriented. And so Michigan deserves leadership that treats this role with the seriousness it demands. And I can tell you with confidence that I'm that leader. I hope to earn everybody's support after they watch this. And if I do, I hope you join our movement at monicaformichigan.com.
All right. Thanks, Monica.
Sure. Thank you.